and welcome to podcast number 1, our very first podcast of MadAboutComics. And we have your hosts here. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Greg.
And we were going to start off our first podcast basically describing to you how we came up with the title, because I think it's a pretty clever one. At least I do. MadAboutComics. MAD is an acronym that stands for Married Analogous Dorks. The second word you could actually trip up on pretty easily because it looks like it's saying anal, but analogous, it does fit, because if you look it up in the definition as far as biology is concerned, it's things that are similar but different, like, an insect that has wings versus a bird that has wings, and we're two of a kind but we're different, husband and wife, and we review comics. And dork, I think that described me to a T, because the way they describe it, at least on hellogiggles.com, is smart in less useful areas, awkward but proud regardless. That's totally me. If I was totally honest, I'm not really a geek or nerd. I'm more of a dork. And Greg could probably chime in on what he thinks he's more of. But
plus, nerds are a bit taken. Everyone seems to be a nerd or a geek these days, so we wanted to kind of take it a different direction. Give some credit to the word dork. It can also be used in a positive context, as nerd and geek has become. So
yeah, we're trying to make all
we want it to be different.
The antisocial
labels.
Noun descriptive labels to describe people. We want to make them all cool, positive, and eventually cool. So hopefully we're on our way to do that. So welcome to our awesome, fantastic, super duper phenomenal podcast. Yay! I don't know why we haven't done this sooner, because it's like it's 9 p.m. here in Phoenix. You watch so many or listen to so many of these podcasts, and you hear how they're like totally hungover from some big party or thing that they went to, and they're totally drinking their energy drinks.
Well,
we're drinking. We already ate, but I'm drinking non-caffeinated ginger ale. But the perk there is it has wine. I don't know. I should divulge that.
In our awesome bombshell glasses that we got at the San Diego Comic-Con.
Yes. Must add that we were drinking ginger ale, like a wine spritzer, with our lovely DC bombshells. We got all 12 of the
I'm drinking out of Black Canary right now.
And I'm drinking out of the lovely Zatanna, that doesn't get enough credit, even though she more recently got her series. I don't think that many people, or girls at least, read about her. So yeah, this is fun. Just hanging out, chilling here. I'm not wearing any pants, which is awesome. And we're about to talk and dive into talking about comics. This is great.
So usually what led us to this is on our drives to San Diego, it would be about a nice 5-hour drive, and we listened to a couple of podcasts revolving around comics, and all of them seem to have the same format where they discuss nothing but modern comics, which is fine and dandy, but not everyone has an extensive pull list of 20 comics, and not everyone wants to read about all the modern ones. So we thought we'd take it in a different direction where we talk about a modern comic.
Well, and it's not just modern comics. I definitely want to chime in on that note. I love a lot of the podcasts we listen to, but it is like, this is what just came out yesterday. It's Wednesday, and now our podcast Thursday. Greg's absolutely right. He is now a professional, I would say, comic book collector, but I really, obviously, me and a lot of girls out there that are definitely helping out the comic book community, and comic book companies make more issues revolving on women. We got pulled in through particular key issues. I personally got pulled in through the Darkness and Witchblade series back in the day. That Mark Silvestri did, but more importantly that, more popular culture, it's really all these adaptations like movies and TV shows that are multiplying like rabbits, it seems like, out there. And so we wanted to pepper in some of that too, and not make all of these podcasts so monotonous and the same. We're definitely going to promise you guys that we're going to mix it up. I think that's the one thing that we can commit to.
Yeah, long story short, we're gonna talk a little bit about comics, something new, something old, but then we're also going to talk about, the various shows and movies that are adaptations based upon comic books. So we're not just going to be talking about the new issues that just hit yesterday. We're going to have a couple throwbacks, something maybe from 10 years ago, something maybe from 30 years ago. It depends. Maybe we'll do a special on Starro. Who knows? And
like you mentioned Starro because we just watched the Robot Chicken special DC
Stephanie's
villains too.
Stephanie's
And I
gonna
wanted
bring
to
Star
write.
back.
I wanted to write. A really awesome Aquaman and Mera issue. I'm a writer, by the way, and I always think about these spec scripts and cool spec comics I could write. And I was like, oh my gosh, Greg and I were just laughing out loud with a really old throwback Aquaman issue that had the most vicious villain out there in the DC universe, Starro, which is a joke. And Seth Greenaway beat us to the punch by throwing Starro in a claymation animation version in the show. So I'm kind of bummed about that.
Starro appeared in the original issue of the Justice League, Brave and the Bold 28. That was who they faced off against. The dangerous Starro, who turned other starfish into supervillains.
Starro, a humongo villainous starfish.
Alien starfish.
Alien starfish with an eye. So moving right along and getting back on track, what was our first topic of interest?
Seconds.
Seconds. Do we have seconds to review seconds? At first when I read this title, and I, truth be told, we were listening, again, like Greg was saying, we really got into the idea of doing a podcast by driving 5 hours from Phoenix to San Diego, listening to Comic Vine, which, we love sharing and talking about the things that we like. If you've not heard the Comic Vine podcast, listen to it, especially if you have a long drive. We're kind of going to be more of the short fly-by-night, fly by the seat of our pants, or no pants in my case. But we really love the review they did on Seconds. This is our review, especially being such big Scott Pilgrim fans. Of course, the movie came out and everything, and then reading it.
Just to kind of give you a little bit of background, Seconds is by Brian Lee O'Malley, who was of, as Stephanie mentioned, Scott Pilgrim fame, and a couple of the reviews think about Scott Pilgrim-ish meets Groundhog Day, if you will. That's what Seconds is about, again, by Brian Lee O'Malley. I think it is his second book following up to Scott Pilgrim, so that's the one that we're going to be covering right now.
Yeah, I don't think we have to do that much exposition, but yes, Brian Lee O'Malley wrote Seconds in a very manga cartoonesque way, which, side note, I really love the drawing in that it is some kind of minimalistic, simplistic, and me being a writer, manga style, but Greg, being blown away with comic book artists like Jim Lee and myself with like Michael Turner and everything, our whole, kid lives growing up. It's cool to see a comic be so darn popular. I mean, literally, as soon as we heard the review from Comic Vine, we're like, we have to see this. How did we miss this coming out? But, amongst the rush of so many things being released and all the fanfare at Comic-Con, this went under our radar. But we're so excited to see that he wrote something else. And then, of course, we rushed home and had to get it. But there was several comic book stores that were sold out. Once we finally did get our hands on it, we kind of have to, fight for who gets to read what first. I won. I read Seconds. And the story basically revolves around a late 20s girl. Her name's Katie, very ambitious. In some ways, kind of reminds me of myself, truth be told, if I'm being completely honest, who is a really awesome, fantastic cook, actually. She actually made this restaurant. The name of the restaurant's called Seconds. So at first I thought it was, referring to time, seconds, minutes, hours, but it's really referring to seconds, having seconds of a main dish that you really love to eat, getting your fill. And that's really what she does. It's almost kind of speaking to one of the 7 deadly sins, I think, which is gluttony. She couldn't keep getting enough of a good thing, only wanting the good things to keep repeating day to day. And the overarching story, if you will, I'll dive into that first, is basically she's getting ready to leave this first restaurant that she helped launch with a bunch of friends that she started off. They went off and they got bored with starting the restaurant, so she kept continuing running it with the official owner that actually funded the restaurant. And she kind of got tired of just being in the background and not being able to have a restaurant that she could call wholly her own and that she did herself. Kind of along the lines of that being kind of an egocentric endeavor, wanting to be just her and just her idea and everything, she wants to make a second restaurant. And what was the name of the second restaurant that she originally wanted? Basically Katie's.
Katie's.
Yeah.
That was the name of it. And basically the story, that's where the book kind of enters. Katie is in the process of overseeing the construction on Katie's, aptly named, and her original restaurant, Seconds. It's a bit outside of town, if you will, and she also lives in the house because she's been saving literally all of her money just so she could, put it into this new restaurant. And, without giving away too much, there's a spirit of the house, if you will, and Katie comes across this magic box that contains a notepad and one mushroom. And what happens is, if you write down your mistake in this notepad and you eat the mushroom, you wake up and your mistake is gone, as if it never happened. She retains memory of it, but it's erased from existence.
Before diving too much into this, I know a lot of podcasts do this, so we're going to definitely give you the disclaimer right now.
Spoiler
There's
alert.
going to be spoilers, so I don't think we have to dive into it all the way to the very end, because I ultimately want to entice readers to read this one. It's one of the best graphic novel books that you could read that actually really has a poignant message. I did mention that it reminds me a little bit about me, in the fact that it really should remind everyone a little bit about themselves, and that, we're all
Very
flawed,
true.
and there's many things that we try to redo in our lives, and we think, well, what if we could just do this? What if we could do that? The funny thing about, in the case of Katie, and it's really cool because it kind of dives into also kind of folklore from Eastern European religions about or mythologies about how the hearth, the fireplace of a home, and in this case there's a fireplace in this old restaurant that was converted out of an old tavern, should be swept and taken care of. And this really cool kind of hipster type character that's younger and is a waitress in Katie's restaurant believes in these type of mythos, and then she decides to leave bread out and sweep the hearth for this house
And
creature.
a change of clothes.
And a change of clothes. Very nice girl. And Katie's like, well, what the hell? I'm so full of myself. I'm going to be out of here. Why are you doing this? And the girl that she was talking to, she later befriends, is like, well, my grandma used to meet, or was my mother, used to read me stories about, these house creatures and how they could get angry if you don't take care of the hearth or the fire, the heart of the home. And for good cause, because it turns out that later you'll find out, if you read the story, and you must read the story, Katie ends up pissing off this house spirit, because it turns out that this notebook and the mushroom belongs to this house spirit, and she really was only supposed to eat one mushroom. She was supposed to only get one mulligan, and she ends up taking a bunch of mushrooms to undo her life mistakes, whether it's like cheating on her boyfriend behind his back, or saying the wrong thing to not get the right deal on the right restaurant that she's trying to open. It turns into a royal cluster brain quite quick, with these really cool, like, cosmic level schemes of what you do when you do try to erase your mistakes and try again. The twist that this story has is that she ends up creating completely different parallel universes that let her do it all over again. She doesn't completely erase the past. So then essentially she royally F-ups kind of this opens, if you will, this kind of time riff where she basically has all these different lives or worlds created just to sort of erase her mistakes, but it's ultimately pointing to the fact that you can't truly erase mistakes.
And it makes sense, and what I like about it is you see the character's progression, where the first mistake she tries to undo, it's really not about herself. She tries it in, she's really trying to be a good person. Her first mistake isn't, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. Basically, an accident happens and she wants to take that accident back. So
it starts out like a simple
enough,
right? Yeah. It starts out simple enough, like as a good deed, and then it turns into more and more.
It's a very slippery slope. Exactly.
Such a slippery slope.
And then you see her towards the end. She's just popping mushrooms like they were
candy.
Basically trying to. Very selfish towards the end, because she's just trying to fix everything, like, do over. Very much like how the movie Groundhog Day did, if you remember that movie, where Bill Murray was trying to do everything for himself at first, and then towards the end he got more altruistic, if you will, and just trying to be a better person for everyone else.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a slow boil for her to be good. It's almost like she had to reach an epiphany and basically let, quite literally, all hell break loose to realize she needed to change her ways, and she ultimately had to confront her inner demons. And it plays out in a really cool, interesting way. So again, if you guys haven't read it yet or even heard about it, like we have completely admittedly have not heard of it until we went to SDCC. Go buy it, read it.
Seconds was a really good read. Definitely should check it out.
Oh yeah, and then we're gonna go into our next segment for today. We're gonna do a throwback comic review. But before we do that, I think I kind of just jumped in there and introduced myself a little bit about what I do. Maybe you want to talk about a little bit about what you have done in your past. What you're hoping to do.
I used to collect comics when I was younger, then kind of stopped really and kind of got back into it about 3 or 4 years ago. And the issue that we're going to be talking about is what really kind of threw me back into it, but more along the lines of a personal note. I'm a financial advisor, so very monotonous, boring job, if you may think.
We all like to escape our day dealings every once in a while,
right,
and monotony, to talk about comics. That's the tie that binds. That's why we're all here. But you want to talk more about your passions and stuff that you've done for fun on the side.
Well, I was getting into that. So before that, some of you might have heard of me. I was the guy getting beat up by Herschel Walker. I did MMA for a little bit. Strike Force, I think that was Miami in like 2009 or 10, regardless. So dabbled in MMA a little bit, definitely like it. Trained actively, kind of been on a sabbatical, if you will, looking to get back into it. That's really what I do for fun outside of work, comics and fighting. So that's a good mix. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We've been happily married for forever. Well, we've known each other for a long time.
Let's air all of our grievances right now in the air and talk about
2 years.
how time is not a real good indicator of how long we've loved each other. But yeah, it seems like we've been married for 5 years because we've been together for 5 years, but we've been married for only 2.5.
Correct.
But, yeah, put him on the spot. He'll forget dates, times, anything. But he's very punctual. So to your credit.
Thank you. So moving right along then,
yes.
for the throwback, like I said, this is the issue that really kind of reignited my passion for comics and got me into collecting. Maybe it's to blame. So, Stephanie, if you want anyone to blame, definitely blame Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee, and Scott Williams for creating Hush, because that is what we're going to be talking about, and that's what really got me back into it.
Why would I blame them? I have to think, though.
So Hush, basically, it was Jim Lee's story. Jeff Loeb wrote it, and Scott Williams was the inker, I believe. A couple really good things about the story that I really like. Obviously, spoiler alert, this has been out for quite some time, so we are going to be talking in greater detail about this. If you haven't read it, stop listening and go read it. But Hush was just really an all-around great story. Outside of the artwork that Jim Lee has done, the story was really phenomenal. Something that I really like about it, which was really, it's kind of a minor detail if you like, but so many different characters were alluded to and talked about in the story Hush. It's Batman centric. It revolves around Batman, but outside of the typical Batman players like Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, Clayface, like that.
I love that Catwoman had a real poignant role in this.
She did. She had a very poignant role.
Yeah.
And then there's also Superman and even Crypto the Superdog makes an appearance in this movie. This show rather. So it was
comic.
Yeah, it was a very, very good story. Basically, it centers around Batman's out on patrol. An accident happens, if you will, and the Huntress basically has to save him and rush him to the Batcave where he needs surgery stat because he's about to die. And he kind of, through Morse code, tells Alfred who to call. And that's his childhood friend that he knew, who's some kind of famous surgeon, if you will. And that's how the Bat gets brought back into life. Before we go any further into that.
What was this written, by the way? Like, it was during the...
It was, I believe, 2008 is when it came out.
Oh, gosh, why did I feel like it was so much... It's so funny, because I tend to confuse key issues. I always confuse Hush with The Killing Joke, which The Killing Joke came out around the time of the Tim Burton era, right before the Tim Burton era of Batman movies.
Yeah, I believe Killing Joke was like the late 80s. And
I was just curious, but I'm pretty sure this is during, I guess, the modern age of comics. And it basically every
2003.
Villain, yeah, I knew it was earlier than 2008. That was the one key point I wanted to point out. And it was also written by, did we mention who it was written by?
Jeff Loeb.
Jeff Loeb. He's a really good writer. And
it's just the modern age.
Modern age. Okay, I was going to say anything like 2000 and older, but I want to get right to the end, but that's not fair. We have to go through what was in the whole thing. But it is a real epic comic for a one sit down read that you can easily get through. What, an hour?
Yeah, definitely an hour because it's a good read. So like I said, just to kind of give you the cliff notes, if you will, Batman is basically on life support. Through Morse code, he tells Alfred to call his childhood friend, Dr. Thomas Elliot. This was a guy that Bruce Wayne grew up with. Thomas Elliot is a master surgeon. He comes back and saves his life, basically. Then, naturally, Alfred has Nightwing go crash a car, and that's the front page headlines, that Bruce Wayne almost dies in an accident, this, that, the other thing. And
you want to know what happened? It was the Riddler. The Riddler was behind all... Oh, I said it too soon.
Yeah, jumping right to the end,
well,
we
that
have
was the best.
Riddler.
I just have to say, like, just the quote that Batman delivered, like, it's what makes him that hard-boiled, like, the back-and-forth joke between him and Batman, and we'll get to the new Batman and Superman movie, is that he's always the detective, and Superman's always the Boy Scout. Like, the way he deduces it, it's almost like Sherlock and being the master sleuth detective that he
Definitely
is.
Great banter between Batman and Superman, so just kind of a brief rundown.
Sorry.
Yeah, so skipping to the end, it brings the Riddler back, which definitely gives him some credence because this isn't your Jim Carrey Riddler, which I didn't like, by the way. This shows the Riddler as some kind
Jim Carrey.
He was interesting, but this shows the Riddler as more of
who he is.
A mastermind, not to the point where he's trying to make a joke out of everything, but like how this guy has thought this out to the letter T. Basically,
he's the one who sent Batman on this whole kind of almost like wild goose hunt.
Right.
To almost, like, I hate to say it, shamelessly showcase all the bad guys. But it obviously at the same time sets up the device for us to see so many characters in one key issue, and it's motivated well. It's almost kind of like self-ingratiating, if you know what I mean.
Yes. So he's following a Killer Croc, stole something, so he's following him. And that leads him over to Metropolis.
Almost like these monsters and bad guys tag team each other. Because isn't he like run into the Scarecrow? He runs into...
Clayface is there. He has to fight Superman briefly because Poison Ivy has him under control. That's the really classic cover 2 issue number 612. A very sexy
Poison Ivy in this one. And I know there's a lot of Poison Ivy cosplayers out there. I'm one of them. There's a very sexy Poison Ivy in this key issue. For sure.
Ultimately, what ends up happening is this friend that saved Bruce Wayne's life, Dr. Thomas Elliot, actually turns out to be one of the players. His name is Hush. He's an actual character that they kind of introduce. So first you think he's behind it, but then it turns out to be the Riddler. Also, another key thing happens during this story arc, and that's Bruce Wayne, or Batman, actually reveals his identity to Catwoman for the first time. He actually lets Selina Kyle know who he is because he's really ready to pursue a relationship with her at this time. I mean, they always have that on again, off again because Selina doesn't really want to leave her life. But
talking about on and off again, the interesting dynamic where Harley Quinn gets pulled into the whole thing in the opera scene. Her and the Joker at this point in time when the comic was written, or within that that time frame, or when the issues were being released coincidentally with Hush, was they weren't together, but she still wanted to get in on the joke that the Joker was playing at the opera on Batman, just because she wanted to be near Mr. J. And that's awesome, cool dialogue. And he was even asking, why are you in this? And she's like, well, why wouldn't I be in it if I knew the Joker, my love of my life, Mr. J, is involved? So that's another fun one for any of you Joker Harley Quinn fans out there. I really like that dialogue.
Definitely memorable lines, and like I said, just the overall story. And what I liked is that even if something that really drew me to it and got me back into it is because it introduced, or not introduced, but reintroduced so many players. It wasn't just a Batman story revolving around Batman, the Joker, and 3 other people. Like I said, it had Batman, a bunch of the enemies: Clayface, Joker, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Scarecrow. Two-Face was in it. Seemingly everything was in it, and then the last thing you would expect is that the Riddler kind of set everything up. And there's even a great line towards the end where, the Riddler's threatening to make everything public because the Riddler figured out who Batman is. He knows who Bruce Wayne is, and Bruce Wayne's like, "You're not gonna tell him because what's the point of a riddle if everyone knows the answer?" And that really messes with Enigma's psyche.
Effed with Enigma's psyche, so he ended up taking it to himself. So the joke was ultimately on him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, so it is good. Now that we're rehashing it and Greg's talking about some of the key points, I'm going to have to go back and give it a little bit more credit than credit's due because it was a pretty epic episode.
And then heartbreakingly, you think that Batman and Selina Kyle, or Catwoman, are about to... let's not
give that part away, because that's kind of cool.
Okay.
I love that it's
go read the book.
Some of the best stories, and especially in this graphic novel, is that right when you think something's neatly tied up and all the crazy, nice, cool winter banter is delivered and it ends, all of a sudden there's like this extra twist, and it does involve Catwoman, and it's sexy, and it's cool, and it epitomizes what she's about and he's about, and it's like the cat chase that keeps on going, the cat and bat. So
that was our roundabout, kind of all over the place about Hush. That's kind of just how it is when you talk about comics. Sometimes you jump to the end, and then you go back to the middle, and to the end, and this, that, and the other thing, because you just have so many parts.
And that's what makes us dorks. We're not geeks. We're not going to methodically go through things.
Exactly.
Sorry, we're not Comic Vine. Again, love that podcast. We're not some of the other ones, the ABC comics and stuff like that. We're just a married couple that can dork out on comics. So if you're the same like-minded people, and you're married or not married, or just happily single but married to comics, I mean, it's again the tie that binds that brings people together, just like gamers and cinephiles. So that's our 2 reviews. So you could be expecting one modern and one throwback every time. Again, like I said at the beginning, we're going to be mixing things up, and we'll be opening it up to comics once we figure out and get a little bit more advanced with how these podcasts work.
We'll also establish a Twitter page, so if we get enough followers, you guys can definitely send us in your requests, what you want to hear, talk about, things like that. And then just to kind of attempt to differentiate ourselves, we're going to kind of bridge away from comics in the print form, if you will, and we want to talk a little bit about shows right now. Comics are very popular, and there's a lot of shows. Obviously, DC's Arrow is something that's just killing ratings right now.
And again, circling back to a lot of the fun characters that we saw in Hush, it's just like a smorgasbord, and you never know who's going to show up next. In the sense of, there's always leaks online saying, what the next show is going to encompass and stuff. But how cool was it? Because I've been a big fan of the new Suicide Squad. Is it the new Suicide or the new Suicide Squad? They're always revamping.
They just revamped it, so I think it's just the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the 2011,
the
2012.
The original DC 52, not the new one.
Yeah, but loved it. Loved her, and...
Still waiting to see Harley Quinn. We just heard her voice. I'm a counselor. I'm a therapist,
Yes, but her and whose relationship in Suicide Squad? Loved that. Deadshot. Yes, Deadshot was so great. And hoping that she would make some screen presence. So that's what I'm talking about as far as, like, you never know who's going to appear. You hear Harley Quinn's voice in Arrow, and I think a lot of fans out there that have been following Arrow was hoping to see her on screen. But such a beloved character like her, we want to make sure she's given the casting decisions that
hopefully they
due
won't
process.
Botch it.
Yeah, not like other characters that we're going to go off later to, like with Batman versus Superman. But Arrow is a really great show. awesomely helmed by Stephen Amell and Manu Bennett, who Greg
Recently
has met.
Bennett. Yes.
Greg has a little bromance going with Manu. Took a picture with him at Phoenix Comic Con.
That guy's awesome. I'm sorry. He brought Deathstroke to life, and he's just such a awesome dude. And I was a fan of him when we were watching Spartacus.
Oh, we cracked out on that.
She was visibly... I mean, she saw I was depressed when Crixus died on Spartacus because I felt that I lost a drinking buddy.
Yeah, like they were like bros. They had like this unsaid connection. And doing a little bit more research on him, it was crazy to find out that he kind of made his debut way back in the day when he played Alexander in like an awesome Xena episode, and she was Cleopatra. So a younger and surprisingly not as cute Manu. So he's one of those people like a fine wine, just looks better and ages so gracefully over time, and it's great. We have a picture that will forever encapsulate Greg's and Manu's relationship. It almost looks like a prom photo because Greg has his arm around Manu's waist, and Manu's such a cool dude. If you ever seen any interviews or talks or panels with him, really sweet, very humble and gracious.
Gonna go for the full prom pose next time.
Full prom pose.
Yeah. So, just kind of getting back, though, the show landscape, DC's kind of really on a tear. Obviously, Arrow and then Flash, who many of you might have seen the episode because the first episode is fully leaked online.
It leaked. We saw it. It's awesome.
And then we have Gotham also coming up. And then Marvel has... We're not going to talk about Marvel. We're just going to focus on DC shows, really.
For this episode.
For this episode. Arrow's been gangbusters. Flash looks very, very promising. Gotham looks interesting. They're going to be taking the police department spin, basically. Think of Batman minus Batman, if you will, if that makes any sense. And then Constantine, they're also rolling out. To be honest, I don't really follow Constantine that much, so I'm not going to have too much to say about that. Gotham looks promising. The really thing that just has me confused is
I'm personally looking forward to Constantine just chiming in because it really is holding true to the character.
Is that the same Constantine
kind of
with Keanu
character?
Reeves?
That was the movie, and a lot of people were annoyed by it just because Keanu was like the hot thing to cast at the time with the Matrix coming out, the Matrix
it's the
series
same
and everything.
Constantine?
It's the same exact Constantine.
Okay.
It's just this one's being more true to the comic and the character and everything. It looks like the guy they cast was perfect for the job. And looking forward to that. Again, not going to Comic-Con, it's more of like a big marketing campaign just as much as anything else. And there's trains with these big exhibits, and there's this cool like 3D globe you could go in and be immersed in the Constantine show. A lot of cool things.
Right outside San Diego Comic-Con.
Right outside.
Across the street.
Just as much as a party outside the SDCC as there is inside, which sets it apart from any other con. But back to Arrow and Flash, the way Arrow so seamlessly gave room for Flash coming in. I don't want to give too much because it's not officially out, so I don't know if we could get sued or something. But let's just say a friend of a friend let us see the episode. It's cool. Like in the Flash show, he goes from his city to
Starling City.
Starling. It was like Star City, not Starling City.
Star City's in the comic, Starling in the show.
Starling in the show, and he goes in mid-show because he just acquired his awesome fast powers by having all these chemicals doused on him during a lightning storm, making room for the show to kind of walk on its own legs to keep something original. He runs really fast to the Arrow in Starling City just to get some advice, and it was just cool because it was kind of like both of them like, oh, I wish I had what you had. Oh, I wish you had what you had. And it was like its own bromance kind of thing, which,
very
Greg really responds to.
Mutually respective.
It was cool.
Arrow kind of wishes he was a little bit like the Flash. Flash sees the Arrow as some badass vigilante.
And the actor that plays the Flash is so good.
Grant Gustin.
Grant Gustin. I think he's perfect. He has that kind of tall, kind of wiry build. Kind of almost like a swimmer's body, but someone that you could think would run really fast.
Yeah, he looks like a good young Barry Allen, if you will. Flash seems to, the first episode. Are we getting into it or not at all?
No, not that much. I like that it kind of tipped off. Arrow kind of lent into that one, but
basically it's going to be him figuring out who he is, what happened, and how to deal with it, just to kind of give you
that's very 30,000 foot view.
what these shows tend to do is they kind of give you little Easter eggs to kind of give you a taste of what's coming. Hopefully the show will deliver on it. So you see what happens in The Flash, and then it alludes to other people that eventually the Flash will have to fight down the line. So it's a very, very, very good show. I believe it's coming out in October, I think, is the
This
official...
fall's going to be a crazy fall because there's so many, like, scary shows I want to see. Not scary, but, like, you know, genre fan picks, like iZombie and all of that. I would love to dive into it. But thankfully, we'll have more and more podcasts, and iZombie is based off of...
There's some recasting... So they didn't air the pilot at San Diego Comic-Con. It was just an extended trailer.
Yeah, he got to see the iZombie panel that I was dying to see because I was doing my portfolio review for my comic at this past SDCC. he kind of throws that in my face, but it's okay. That's what spouses are for. So far we covered one new, one old graphic novel this time around.
We talked a couple about DC shows.
Yeah, and then what we also wanted to round our podcast off with, we got about 20 more minutes, is movies. A couple movies we wanted to review. One that we recently been obsessing on is Guardians of the Galaxy.
You've probably seen it too.
Guardians. We saw it twice.
And to be completely honest, when Guardians was first announced, I had zero interest to see it, but not zero interest to the point where I don't want to see it. I was just meh. I could care less. I could take it or leave it. As we came closer, all my friends wanted to see it, so I went along. And it was just a fun movie. Really, really fun movie. It exceeded my expectations. I still stand by my assessment that while it was you could make the argument that it was a great movie, I still don't put it on level with Avengers.
You go into it not knowing what to expect because it's one of the lesser known
characters.
Band of superhero characters. And what I loved most is just as surprising as seeing this really be at the heart of it, a movie about unlikely friendships.
Yes.
It was the twist to me being that it was penned and thought as being a great idea from one of the co-writers on this, Nicole Perlman. She's been working on this project for 2.5 years, way before even Marvel and the company was like, yeah, this would be a great idea. Let's just throw that in there. Because it seemed like an unlikely coupling. Like, Greg knew when he saw the trailer, Guardians. I honestly didn't. As soon as we saw the Easter eggs and stuff hinting at the end, because I think they showed Benicio del Toro's character as the Collector when they first started doing the reveals. He's done in Thor. That far back. Oh my gosh. But, Marvel movies infamously always, give a little nod at the end of the credits. What's going to be next. It was cool to see that, but cooler than that, I personally, being a film writer, trying to break in the comics industry myself, seeing that Nicole Perlman took a huge leap of faith and was working on the project, copy after copy, edit after edit, and then finally to round out the crew talent, James Gunn came in. Which really
kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, because he really didn't do many credits before this as a director. He did Scooby-Doo, which, was another just ridiculously fun title, but it wasn't like he did so many before that.
And he did a part in movie 43, which was that.
And then he did write Slither that was starring, here's kind of like if you want to do 2 degrees of separation, that starred Nathan Fillion, was in Slither, and Nathan Fillion did a voice appearance in Guardians. Who did he do the voice appearance, a cameo of in Guardians?
The blue guy, when they first get to the kiln, the guy that Groot beats up, that was Nathan Fillion's voice. And also I found out that basically James Gunn worked a lot, or does work a lot, with Michael Rooker of Walking Dead fame, or who played Yondu, who's probably going to be back and be involved simply because those two are attached at the hip. But Guardians did a really good story of kind of, we all see where Marvel's headed with their story, how they're, the really only thing that's been consistent about most, if not all, of their movies have been the Infinity Stones. Thor 2 had an Infinity Stone, Avengers had it, obviously Guardians had it.
If you missed it, because I was asking Greg, because I'm not that hip on the Infinity Stones, and I was like, is the Tesseract an Infinity Stone? And yes, it is an Infinity Stone. He was trying to tell me not. I'm like, it's gotta be.
basically that's the way they're going with it. Thanos is going to be a big bad guy. Obviously, he could only fit for an Avengers movie, maybe Avengers 3, because Avengers 2 is going to be Ultron already. But that's where they're kind of going, that the Infinity Stones and Thanos, that's where they're headed for their big blockbuster. There's talks that the Guardians are going to meet the Avengers eventually in a movie. Maybe in Avengers 2, you might see a little something. Guardians does leave off on a couple... well, actually, it leaves off on the one big question is who's Star-Lord's father, who's Peter Quill's father. So Guardians 2 already got greenlit, so they're probably going to be addressing that question. And then, again, by Guardians 2, they might have some more interaction. There's also talks about introducing Adam Warlock, who was alluded to in an Easter egg scene, or Nova, or Carol Danvers as a Captain Marvel. So it was just a really fun movie, and I definitely want to bring recognition to Dave Bautista, who really, you know, I mean, granted, someone made a great point that the depth of his character wasn't really, you know, he wasn't really called on to do any type of deep, emotional, or acting that took that much skill. But for someone coming in from a, you know, WWE professional wrestler background, I thought he absolutely killed it as Drax.
I really love the part where he was... petting
Rocket towards the end.
At the end,
nice.
And it was like, you know, especially when they had the earlier altercation and he called him vermin and everything. And and Rocket's the least friendly furball you'll ever talk to, because he's the little raccoon with the big gun. I mean, it doesn't get more iconic than that when you're trying to sell a movie. But you know, he exposes his soft underbelly, if you will, because he was in a very vulnerable point with... Don't have to get into the details there, just watch it. I turned a little over to see how Greg reacted. He had tears. Sorry, maybe not but yes,
it was touching. I wasn't crying though.
You know, just yeah.
And then I also kind of wanted to bring something up, and maybe this is me reading too much into it, but Zoe Saldana, it's like if you need
a
someone
CGI,
in
different
a
color,
CGI,
different colored,
like a, you know, a pink, green, purple
different
character.
color from a different alien race.
Obviously, Avatar, she was blue. Now she's green as Gamora.
And she's just a beautiful person. It's like she could just be herself as an alien.
She's going to be I don't know if she's going to become some kind of staple of comic book or CGI movies, because she has that look where she could pull off anything. And like I said, I just thought it was funny how she was a blue person in Avatar, and she made a very good-looking Gamora, if I may, with Guardians. So definitely wanted to bring recognition to those two, and absolutely to Chris Pratt, who I can't imagine anyone else as Star-Lord at this point.
He's almost becoming like a method actor, and unwillingly. He I don't think he liked the process of losing 60 pounds
in
and
6 months.
Gaining all that muscle, but well done. I mean, he definitely got the chiseled body to show the fruits of his labor. So good job, Chris Pratt. I mean, going from like that just kind of comedic...
He was chubby in Parks and Rec.
Oh, yeah. All the way.
And then, you know, absolutely Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel, who I think Vin Diesel kind of got the short end of the stick. Did they really need his name just to say 3 words or 5 words? Because he also said, "We are Groot."
He had to act out the different way. The different ways I am Groot is delivered.
That's true.
But also, one more actor that I really liked was the guy that basically started him on his journey in outer space. Basically, this version of Guardians, he kidnapped him to become a Guardian of the Galaxy. You actually loved him. And what I really liked about Michael Rooker was that he... You think he's kind of one of the bad guys in this, and he's kind of an asshat, for lack of better words. But you know, this is kind of this ongoing kind of banter between them that they expect to kind of slight each other.
Yeah.
And it was kind of touching, because at the end of the day, Chris Pratt did the right thing and gave this planet colony one of the Infinity Stones to ensure peace. And Michael Rooker's character, he ultimately wanted it because that's what he does. He takes really rare things and sells them. His arrow was cool, by the way. He had a really cool arrow weapon that would take out like 30 people at once. It was super cool.
When he whistles.
It was
really, really cool.
Yeah, it was like an enchanted, like almost alive kind of arrow that, you know, would move to his beck and call or his every whistle. So,
if you haven't seen Guardians, check it out, and then the last thing we really wanted to touch
well,
upon...
I'm glad that we actually have at least 10 minutes to talk about this, because we could easily go on a tangent about it.
So, the movie that we're going to be talking about is Batman and Superman.
Batman versus Superman.
Dawn of Justice. Basically, what we know right now is that they're loosely basing it on Frank Miller's story of the Dark Knight arc, which in itself begs a lot of questions. So before we get into the other stuff, if you're not familiar with Frank Miller's Dark Knight, that they're basing this loosely off of, Batman is, mid-50s, he's retired, but he's coming out of retirement because Gotham is just overrun by crime. He's a bit overzealous at times, meaning that he's gotten quite ornery, so he's, breaking bones and not really asking questions. He's not really being diplomatic. Batman never really was that diplomatic. The government is kind of embarrassed by what he's doing, so they send Superman in to kind of deal with them, and they fight. So this kind of really begs the question, because this story, or this movie, is supposed to be the dawn of justice. They're getting into it. So how are they going to base it off of a story where Superman and Batman meet for the first time, and Batman's almost a senior citizen. He's 55.
He's an old guy, and I don't think I've ever seen a comic, or I personally wanted to read a comic where he was older, because he's always one of the best-looking guys in comics.
Yeah.
Truly. And that's what's interesting about it, and it's no secret that Zack Snyder has a close relationship with Frank Miller, working together on 300. On 300. And now going into Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, I think it's agreed that we're totally okay with the casting of Superman. It's great.
And Cavill's fine. I have no problem with him, and I'll even give Affleck a pass. I'm not thrilled about it, but I'll give him a pass. I'm hesitant because of what happened with Daredevil.
Here's the thing, and I was just mentioning this to Greg the other day. This could be a chance for him to redeem himself, because everybody knows or feels like, and yes, I'll agree too. If I wasn't a raging hormonal teen watching Daredevil, I loved it, 'cause the kiss scene with him and Jennifer Gardner was hot, and it had the what is it? What was that band that was big back then? Oh my gosh. I wish this was like a show you could chime in, because you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I'm looking it up. Google's our friend. Evanescence? That's a band. I don't know.
Effervescence. Hey, I said we're dorks. Doesn't mean we're an encyclopedia of knowledge. Evanescence. Effervescence. Evanescence. Everybody knows that scene, because the one thing I did like about the Daredevil movie was that the way they portrayed him being able to, with his intricate hearing skills, how that translates into him seeing people.
That rain scene was pretty cool.
There was a key issue in Daredevil that kind of showed how he saw when he saw Deadpool, and his sense of smell and everything could say, there's like a stinky burrito in his pocket just by his smell, and the only thing he takes care of is his guns, and he could basically see Deadpool's outline because of his heightened senses, making up for his lack of sight. That is a great segue to what I was talking about with Greg the other day, is that, hey, no one really liked Green Lantern when Ryan Reynolds did that, and maybe it was kind of like a lackluster plot. He did look good in the movie, so that helped, but everybody, without a doubt, can't wait to see Ryan Reynolds play Deadpool, which that was another thing that leaked during SDCC. Test footage of Deadpool. That being said, I am totally open to the fact of Ben Affleck going for it, but he has to go for it. And I don't know or seen any articles saying that how hard he trained for it. I'm not really sure about the outfit, because I think some of his outfits leaked too. But judgment is still out on him portraying Batman, because if Ryan Reynolds could do that leap, and we've seen Ben Affleck.
I think Ben Affleck can do a good Bruce Wayne. I think his Bruce Wayne will be good. It's how his Batman is done. And before we really kind of get into the casting, I just kind of wanted to say it's curious to see how this is going to play out, because Batman and Superman are supposed to be meeting each other for the first time, but yet in the Dark Knight story arc, they kind of fight and they're at odds. So so they're supposed to come together, fight, nearly kill each other, and then go on to form the Justice League. But I mean, obviously they can't write Batman as 55, so
they won't.
It's interesting to how they're going to take it. If you kind of really analyze the Frank Miller story
me,
arc and how it's going to go forward, it doesn't make sense.
I truly think that they're going to take the style elements of Frank Miller, but I think they're going to leave the whole age issue off to the side.
Yeah.
That's really what I think is to be drawn there. What helped Zack Snyder really sell 300, I'm a big movie buff too, you guys will quickly know, is that he had to do some screen tester footage of 300 to make it really Frank Miller's 300 idea to sell to the studios. So, Frank Miller is a very big name in his own right, and he's garnering a lot of movie credits over the last decade. So it might be akin to what he tried to do with 300, is just make sure that there's some more clout brought into the project because there's Frank Miller's involvement. But there's one more key person that the jury's the most out on, specifically Greg and myself, because it's like, how could they? And other people are like, why not? People are very torn on this casting decision. I personally thought that, hey, if Ryan Reynolds could go from a DC character to a Marvel character playing Deadpool, I was thinking, oh my gosh, when I saw Jamie Alexander fight beside Chris Hemsworth, the Hemsworth brothers, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, I was like, wow, she has such chiseled, like, womanly, like, curves and muscle to her. She could make a beautiful Wonder Woman. I'm like, who's it gonna be? Maybe Megan Fox even though I really don't like her.
Gina Carano was thrown out, and
Gina Carano, you could have seen it.
Even Ronda Rousey said she.
And then we're like, oh gosh, they're really looking at all these people. They're seriously taking the time, because we rarely see such a gem and beloved female comic heroine really make a debut in a big way.
They casted her,
and our favorite choice was
olive oil.
Gal Gadot. Gal
Gadot, whatever you say her name. I do not buy her as Diana Prince, the most powerful woman in the world. This is Wonder Woman, folks. Wonder Woman is like Superman's the only person that can contend with Wonder Woman. Oh, and she doesn't have a kryptonite.
Side note, his love has just been reinvigorated to the bajillionth degree with Wonder Woman, because if you guys weren't following Jim Lee during the SDCC to commemorate his 50th birthday and just
Batman's 75th anniversary,
and Batman, and just to say thank you to all his fans that followed him through all the years, because he's like one of the head guys at DC. He hid 50 sketches all throughout the con and tweet hints at where it was. He gave 3 away during the panel, and Greg, by the seat of his pants, happened to have the lucky golden ticket and won the Wonder Woman sketch.
It was like the last one he gave out, too.
It was incredible.
It really was.
It was so cool. And of course, we had to tweet it. It was so awesome. People are like, are you selling it? Do you want to trade it?
Hell no.
Hells to the no. And gorgeous. Exactly what you see. I could never see any comic book artist draw someone like Gal Gadot.
He used whiteout to draw, not to cover up a mistake.
Well, yeah, but yeah, we're going back into the drawing. But to talk about someone that could contend, I was just sitting down having dinner with someone the other day talking movies, and it's like, whatever happened to the days when being a strong, tough woman was really cool. And the example that my friend threw out was Linda Hamilton from Terminator 2. The way she was doing the pull-ups and being all badass, like an empowering woman. That was so neat. And the trend is, okay, there's so many beautiful women. So many women that I think are perfect for the role. You see ScarJo as the Black Widow. You see even Jennifer Garner as Elektra. She's smoking, but you don't really see any muscle to the curves of these women. And maybe it's just kind of like a studio production thing, but this one I think just has gone to the extreme, because you see a lot of pictures of Gal Gadot, and is that how you pronounce it, Gal or Gail? Gal.
It's Gal. It's Gal
Gadot, and she is just rail, supermodel, skinny, and we were trying to follow her progression because she was swearing on all these different blogs and websites that she's gaining, and then she'd do these flexes, and it just looked like there was a little bit of a bean muscle.
It's just that is the one casting decision I cannot get behind, and even just to go away from the look of a character is her acting. In Fast and the Furious, she wasn't that great of an actor. She didn't have that screen presence where we might be able to overlook her looks because, wow, she can really kick ass and is a great actor. She's an average actor at best, and she just does not look the part. And I'm sorry, I will not get behind Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. It's a disservice to the character.
A lot of
think
people,
DC really screwed up.
so many people weighed in. She is a beloved character. That's the ending notes and thoughts on that. And ultimately, the people we mentioned, Jamie Alexander, even Megan Fox, we would have taken, and she's not the best actress. So many people could have wore that tiara and really would have kind of made the presence that so many female fans were waiting for in a really strong female presence. I mean, even Batman spoke to Superman in a key issue about, like, he has a box of everyone's weaknesses. Obviously, Superman's kryptonite, and he had a box with Superman, and it was empty. And it's like,
Wonder Woman's box was empty.
Wonder Woman's box was empty, and Batman was saying to Superman, like, that's the thing. You are her kryptonite. There's no other weakness. If you can at least get to her, what if there comes a day where you can't get to her? That's how bad. That's the gravity of how badass and awesome Wonder Woman is, and we were just hoping to see that. Maybe Gal Gadot will pull something off that totally wows people. We're just voicing our concerns.
CGI
it's rampant.
might help.
It's rampant throughout the web series. For us to say any different would be for us to lie and say, yeah, let's fall into DC's good graces and say she's perfect, because she's not. And this happens time and time again. We just would never in a million years see this happen to our beloved Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
So that being said, we're just gonna finish up our very first #1 podcast. Thank you for joining us. Again, we definitely outlined what you guys should be expecting to see. One new, one old comic, couple shows for you, some movies. We'll be mixing it up. Maybe we can get some interviews on here, have some people chime in. We're always open to your comments and feedback. And definitely subscribe to us on Twitter. We'll get a Twitter up. We'll go ahead and put it on the description under the notes on the podcast, and we hope to be chatting with you soon.
And for those of you that are collectors out there that are on the CGC forums, I'm Stanley1883. Definitely feel free to PM me or whatever. Just let me know what you want to hear or anything like that. That's another way for some of you to get in contact with me if we run in the same circles.
And for all you ladies and guys that happen to be on the Twitter sphere, we're newly acquainted with Twitter. I just recently got introduced to it. I created an account a long time ago, but I never really used it. I'm at S as in Sam, B as in Boy, Joyce. I talk a lot about writing, prominent females writing comics, writing horror. I personally written and produced a couple horror movies, gearing up to do another one. So that's why I tend to throw zombies in here and there. I can't help it.
And that's our podcast.